time ago. Josh Frydenberg, what does this decision by the Reserve Bank today actually mean for the economy?
Well, it's good news for households, people with a mortgage. If you've got a $400,000 mortgage, this will be worth about $60 a month to you, or $720 a year. It's also good news for businesses because it will lower their interest payments. But it is very significant from the Reserve Bank, Laura, because it's the first rate cut in nearly 3 years.
But I suppose the other question is what it actually achieves for the economy. There's been a lot of debate in the lead up to today's board meeting about whether lower interest rates can actually help spur growth, which is a pretty significant issue. A commentator in the Financial Review this afternoon wrote there's no getting away from the fact that GDP growth is very low, inflation is disturbingly low, and the labour market is in serious trouble with high levels of underemployment and low levels of wages growth. Something meaningful has to be done. And there is this debate going on about whether we've reached the end of the effectiveness of low interest rates.
Well, the Reserve Bank Governor in his statement made it very clear, in his words, that employment growth was strong. And as you know, unemployment's around 5.2% today. It was 5.7% when we came to government. And the belief of the Reserve Bank Governor and obviously the board is that unemployment can come down further. And because we're in a particularly low inflation environment, they can cut interest rates as they've done today without raising broader concerns about inflation. The Reserve Bank also made it very clear that their central scenarios for economic growth remains 2.75% for 2019 and 2020. So that's still a good economic growth, and we are focused on a pro-growth agenda with our budget announcements, including more spending on infrastructure, the tax cuts, which will put money into people's pockets, and the 80,000 new apprentices.
Sure, but it's still, you say the central scenario is still 2.75%, but the Reserve Bank statement also is talking about the downside risks in the global outlook. And I'd go back to my question, lower interest rates aren't actually going to do much to stimulate growth at this point of the cycle. Interest rates are already negative, effectively.
Well, monetary policy has a role, but so does fiscal policy, and that's why we as a government have set out a record $100 billion spending on infrastructure.
But when does that actually cut in, Treasurer?
Well, there are projects already underway, and about half of that $100 billion will be over the forward estimates, and there are significant nation-building projects that we're investing in, but also the tax cuts. And you've heard from the Reserve Bank Governor that the tax relief that's provided in the budget, which will see Australians who are earning up to $126,000 get up to $1,080 in their pocket, will be very significant in boosting their disposable income. That will boost economic activity, and that will be important. But you're also right to point out about the negative sentiment we've seen in the global economy, particularly the rising trade tensions between the US and China, and this has seen a downgrade in global economic growth from the IMF and also other warnings from the OECD and other major stakeholders.
Shouldn't, well, I suppose one good thing about these low interest rates is it presumably boosts the bottom line for the budget, and it also gives you an opportunity, doesn't it, to actually accelerate or increase the spending that you can put into the economy in the short term. Are you considering doing that?
Well, we've made it very clear in the budget what our spending priorities are, and that's record spending on hospitals and schools, and as I said, infrastructure spending and apprenticeships, but also the tax relief, which will be important. But we're also managing a balance here, Laura, between ensuring that there's sufficient, strong economic activity, but we're also paying back the debt that we inherited. And that's why we've committed to surpluses, $45 billion of surpluses over the forward estimates. That remains our commitment, and we will deliver the surplus.
You've been putting quite a lot of pressure on the banks to pass this cut on in full. Once again, is there much point in that, given that the anecdotal evidence is that people are taking the opportunity to just increase their payments effectively rather than free up money for consumption spending?
Well, the Reserve Bank Governor himself has made it clear that in this statement today that the funding costs from the banks for the banks have come down significantly, and he would also expect that the rate cuts be passed on in full, and I welcome the decision today from the Commonwealth Bank and from NAB. And I've been critical of the ANZ for not passing on in full the rate cut, because Australian customers, Australian consumers, the public would expect legitimately that when there is a rate cut such as this, the first time in nearly 3 years, that they get to see the full benefits of it.
Well, just finally, Treasurer, there's been a raid on a Canberra Press Gallery journalist today following a story about attempts to bug Australians, if you like. Is that an appropriate use of police powers?
Well, it won't surprise you, Laura. It would be inappropriate for me to comment on ongoing investigations.
Treasurer, thanks for your time tonight.
All the best.